Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
This whole concept of a country that somehow holds, the dramatic icy peaks of the European Alps,
Mhm.
the crystalline blue of the Mediterranean.
And then on top of all that, the echoing ruins of, 4,000 years of civilization.
Exactly, and it's all colliding with this real urgency, a country that is just so aggressively trying to define its modern future. It's a lot.
It is a lot, and that's the essential duality of the Balkans, really.
It is.
And you could argue that nowhere is that conflict, that complexity, more vividly expressed than in Albania. We're talking about a place where ancient Illyrian heritage meets, Roman ambition, Ottoman influence.
And in the shadow of the 20th century's most extreme isolationist regime, it's just layer upon layer.
It is.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to explore Albania, which, people often call Europe's newest great adventure.
The last great secret of the Balkans. You hear that a lot.
You do, and for good reason. We're going to trace this journey of profound resilience, moving from the electric chaos of its capital
all the way to the silent, untamed majesty of its mountain ranges.
Yes. We want to give you, our listener, the shortcut to understanding not just what Albania looks like on a postcard, but how. How centuries of isolation and cultural overlap forged the identity you see today.
And I think the underlying theme guiding our whole journey is this idea of radical transformation, but one that's forged by resilience. We'll look at the stone fortresses right next to these hidden coves, the ancient ruins of Butrint, contrasted with the total modernity of Saranda.
And the sheer cultural persistence you see everywhere, from Berat, the city of 1,000 windows, to the bustling, revitalized capital, Tirana.
Exactly. We're looking for those narrative threads that connect the deep past to this immediate, vibrant present.
So if Albania's story is defined by rapid transformation, then we have to start in Tirana. It's the epicenter.
It really is. And it's a relatively young capital, too. It was only officially designated in 1920.
Right, though the city itself goes back further, founded in 1614. But its modern identity, its crucible, was the 20th century.
It played a critical and often very dark role, especially after the Second World War.
And that history created an immense burden that Tirana had to, literally shed.
Absolutely. Not long ago, the city was notorious. It was known as, this is a direct quote, the most polluted capital in Europe.
That's incredible to think about now.
It is. So the challenge wasn't just a physical cleanup, it was psychological. It was about overcoming the visual drabness and the infrastructural decay left by decades of state control and neglect.
The shift has been just incredible. It speaks to this ferocious determination for modern renewal.
It really does.
They launched what you could call a great green shift, transforming the city into a recognized green city.
With over 30 parks and public gardens. And we're not just talking about a few flower beds here.
No. This is massive urban planning that has demonstrably improved the quality of life. You have these crucial green spaces, like the Grand Park of Tirana, which now really acts as the city's lungs.
And that aesthetic determination, that drive for a new look, is probably most famously symbolized by that initiative from the early 2000s.
You're talking about Edi Rama.
Exactly. The artist-turned-politician who was the mayor. He launched this major government initiative inviting local artists to paint the building facades.
And they weren't subtle pastels, were they?
Not at all. They were bright, engaging, often surreal hues, splashes of color everywhere.
Why do you think that specific act, just painting buildings, was so effective? On the surface, it sounds like simple urban decoration.
But the impact was seismic.
Right.
It was so much more than decoration. Think about it. It was a visible, symbolic act of defiance and revival. When you have spent decades living under a regime where uniformity, gray concrete, and surveillance were the visual markers of state power, splashing a building with bright pink or geometric blue shapes is, it's a declaration of freedom.
It's saying the age of communist gray is over.
Precisely. It instantly injected color, life, and hope, making that transformation palpable for every single resident. It was psychological architecture.
And at the very core of all this pulsing, colorful energy is Skanderbeg Square.
The central hub.
It's not just a landmark, it's the heart of culture and community, spanning over 2.5 acres.
Making it the largest public square in the country. It's where that collective life, that connection, is physically drawn together.
And it honors Gjorgje Kastrioti Skanderbeu, the national hero.
The man who briefly unified Albania against the Ottoman Empire back in the 15th century. So even as the square hosts modern concerts, and community events. The space itself is fundamentally rooted in this national narrative of resistance and self-determination.
But for all the kinetic energy and color you see above ground, Tirana forces you to confront its recent history in the most literal way possible.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting.
We have to talk about bunk art.
Bunk art 1 and 2. These are not just museums. They are these chilling, massive underground complexes that serve as a visceral confrontation with Albania's self-imposed isolation.
And the sheer paranoia of the Hoxha regime.
Absolutely. The scale is just. It's what defies belief. These bunkers were built mostly between the early 1970s and the 1980s under the dictator Enver Hoxha.
And the idea was for the political and military elite to survive a nuclear attack.
Right. But the sheer number of these things is the real insight into the national psyche during that time.
I mean, bunk art 1 and 2 are the most famous ones.
But the regime built an estimated 750,000 bunkers across the entire nation.
Stop and think about that number for a second. A nation of roughly 3 million people building 750,000 reinforced concrete defenses.
That's nearly 1 bunker for every 4 citizens.
That is just staggering. It illustrates a level of militarization and pervasive paranoia that's almost unmatched in the Cold War era.
And you see them everywhere. You can't walk for 5 minutes in parts of Albania without seeing one of these mushroom-shaped domes.
On beaches and mountains, on playgrounds.
It transformed Albania into the most heavily fortified nation on Earth.
And bunk art 1 and 2, which stretch hundreds of feet over 30 meters beneath the city.
Containing over 100 separate rooms linked by these vast concrete corridors.
They're the centralized manifestation of that fear.
Exactly. When you wander through those cold chambers, you are literally struck by the eerie echoes of collective fear and the state's absolute control, which extended down to the smallest detail of personal life. It's the physical preservation of isolation and dread.
And it creates that most visceral juxtaposition in Tirana.
It really does.
Above ground, you have the vibrant colors and the laughter, signifying this radical change and freedom.
And then, just below your feet, you have the physical, concrete manifestation of the isolation and paranoia that defined those decades, now repurposed as a place for historical reflection.
Yet, amidst all this history of radical political and architectural turbulence, the true spiritual anchors have somehow endured.
The Edom Bey Mosque is a stunning example of this.
A truly beautiful, delicate structure built in the late 18th and early 19th centuries.
And crucially, it survived multiple oppressive eras.
Including the 40 years of communist restrictions when Albania declared itself the world's first officially atheist state.
And they shuttered nearly all religious sites, churches, mosques, everything.
But the mosque survived, often just barely. Its slender minaret, rising 98 feet above the busy activity of Skanderbeg Square, offers this quiet haven.
Its survival is less about political expediency and more about the deep cultural importance of faith that even a totalitarian state couldn't fully erase. It was restored and reopened just after the fall of the regime.
A signal of a return to cultural and spiritual openness.
Absolutely.
And that persistence of the national narrative is formally documented at the National Museum of Albania.
Opened in 1981, so it's dedicated to preserving the story of Albanian identity and resilience, but its initial purpose under the regime gives it a really interesting subtext.
Yes, the museum was opened during the twilight of the communist era, and while it housed genuine history, its grand frontage, featuring this sprawling mosaic.
230 feet wide, it's massive.
It was originally steeped in socialist realism. It depicted heroes and everyday citizens, workers, peasants, soldiers, all designed to propagate the regime's view of national identity.
So in a way, the building itself is a contradiction.
Right. It chronicles this collective longing for self-determination through thousands of artifacts, ancient Illyrian helmets, connecting them to their earliest origins, medieval manuscripts.
But it's wrapped in a facade that was designed to promote a nationalist, isolationist, communist ideology.
Exactly. So the transformation of the museum's narrative, subtly shifting away from pure propaganda toward an honest, more complex look at history, is another element of Tirana's modern revival.
It's a history that the modern Albanian people are actively negotiating and reclaiming for themselves.
And finally, even in the heart of this busy, rapidly modernizing capital, the untamed wilderness of Albania is never far away.
No, it's right there.
If you need an escape valve from the density and the historical weight, Dojti Mountain National Park is literally just a 30-minute drive away.
That proximity is so essential to understanding the Albanian sensibility. You can go from the concrete depths of a Cold War bunker to these stunning mountain landscapes.
With dense forests, pristine hiking trails, incredibly diverse flora and fauna.
All within half an hour.
Oh.
It emphasizes that even its most densely populated core is intimately connected to the nation's breathtaking natural beauty.
And that historical tension between urbanity and wildness.
It reminds you that civilization here has always had to contend with the power of the land.
Okay, so leaving the kinetic energy of Tirana, we move south, where the echoes of empires are written into the stones of these ancient, world-class archaeological sites.
Right. Albania wasn't just isolated in the 20th century. For millennia, it was a critical crossroads, which means its history is intensely layered.
Let's start with Apollonia.
Apollonia truly showcases the intellectual and cultural weight this region once carried, established by Greek colonists in the 6th century BCE.
It wasn't just some sleepy port, though.
Oh, not at all. It rapidly developed into a powerful city-state, and crucially, it was renowned as a center of learning.
Its reputation was so great that Aristotle himself praised its influence on philosophy and culture.
And later, it became absolutely essential during the Roman period.
Why was it so vital to Rome?
Well, geographically, it sat right on the Via Egnatia, the major Roman route connecting the Adriatic coast all the way to Constantinople. But more than that, it was an educational hub.
The university town, basically.
You could say that. Roman nobles frequently sent their sons there to study rhetoric and philosophy. Famously, the future Emperor Augustus, known then as Octavian.
Right.
He was studying in Apollonia when he received the news of Julius Caesar's assassination.
That one anecdote alone just grounds the history. It puts Apollonia at the very center of Western civilization's defining moments.
It does. And today, the ruins are incredibly tranquil. Set against this backdrop of peaceful olive groves, you can feel the weight of history when you stand by the remains of the Bluderon, the council house.
Which rises nearly 25 feet high.
It invites this quiet reflection. Once bustling with scholars, traders, and the ambitious elite, today it's defined by silence. The contrast is palpable.
And just down the coast, we find Butrint National Archaeological Park. If Apollonia was intellectual, Butrint was all about strategy.
Oh, absolutely. This site covers over 2,600 years of continuous human occupation and strategic importance.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, Butrint is like the ultimate palimpsest of history.
That's a great word for it. It witnessed the passage of Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, Venetians, each empire building upon the foundations of the last.
And its strategic significance was its access to the sea and the Straits of Corfu.
It was a critical choke point on the Adriatic coast.
So what specifically remains today that tells that story?
You can walk through remnants ranging from Greek mosaics, a well-preserved Roman amphitheater, and an imposing Venetian fortress. The profound contrast here is between the sheer resilience of these stones, which have stood for millennia.
And the acute vulnerability of past grandeur.
Yes. The site is located in a marshy, often overgrown environment. It's a continuous battle against nature, with encroaching forests and rising water tables threatening to reclaim the land.
So the stones whisper lessons about civilizations that thought they were invincible.
Exactly.
Now, moving inland and north, we find Gjirokastër, which locals aptly call the city carved from rock.
And it feels that way. It feels intrinsically tied to the mountain, embodying that blend of culture and geology.
It's a phenomenal living testament to cultural overlap and fierce resilience.
Predominantly shaped by nearly 500 years of Ottoman influence. Gjirokastër means silver fortress, and its imposing castle and robust stone houses were built to last.
Designed for defense and practicality against that mountainous climate.
It's the architecture that really defines it, isn't it? The steep cobblestone streets and the large slate-topped stone houses.
The kulas, or towers, they truly look like they were carved directly from the hillside rock.
They do. These houses were constructed using a dense gray stone, often with 2 or 3 stories, designed like mini fortresses in themselves to protect extended families.
And they all rise sharply to that formidable fortress that crowns the skyline.
You feel the weight of history in every stone. It reflects the perseverance of generations who had to live under constant threat, whether from invading empires or the harsh mountain winters.
Yet, for all that ancient weight and silence, the community is vibrant. The old stone coexists seamlessly with modern life.
Lively conversations spilling out of coffee houses, modern markets thriving. It shows a community that honors its heritage, but is dynamically engaged with the 21st century.
And that idea of functional harmony brings us to Berat,
The city of 1,000 windows.
which is arguably the most picturesque example of cultural coexistence. It rolls along the Osum River, famous for the white Ottoman-era houses rising one upon the other on the steep hillside.
Giving it that iconic layered look.
So why 1,000 windows? Is that just a poetic exaggeration?
Not really. It's an observation based on the traditional architecture. The houses, built during the 18th and 19th centuries, featured these extremely large glassy windows on their front facades.
Designed to maximize light and perhaps
Subtly demonstrate the prosperity of the inhabitants who could afford such a luxury.
So when you view it from across the river, especially at dusk,
The windows glimmer in the sunlight, creating the illusion of 1,000 reflective eyes looking back at you.
and all of this sits beneath the looming silhouette of the medieval citadel, the Cala.
Perched 400 feet above the old town.
Berat is a history lesson in coexistence, built upon that strategic height.
For centuries, it stood as a meeting point of faiths and peoples. Its fortifications were massively rebuilt by the Byzantines over 800 years ago.
And its stone streets echo with influences from Orthodox, Islamic, and Roman architectural styles.
It's one of the few places in the world where a mosque and a major cathedral have peacefully stood side by side for centuries.
So what does this all mean for the modern listener? What's the takeaway?
Well, it means you have a city that is continually adapted. You see modern apartment blocks and bustling coffee shops integrated into this UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Yet it never loses the soul of its traditions.
Exactly. It demonstrates how heritage and change aren't mutually exclusive, how a community can preserve both its dreams and its ancient identity amidst waves of modernity.
It's an example of practical resilience.
That's the perfect term for it.
All right, now we shift our focus dramatically to the north, the vast, untamed wilderness of the Albanian Alps.
The accursed mountains.
This landscape has profoundly shaped the country's history of isolation and the fierce independence of its people. This is where tradition is law, and the landscape dictates survival.
Absolutely. The mountains were the ultimate sanctuary and at the same time the ultimate prison.
We have to start with Valbona Valley National Park, established in 1996 to protect rare wildlife.
Like the brown bears and the very elusive Balkan lynx.
This is where you find that core theme of untamed wilderness meeting deep-rooted tradition.
And the landscape is just overwhelmingly dramatic. These are relatively young mountains, geologically speaking, which means they are incredibly steep and rugged.
Towering cliffs soaring over 6,000 feet above dense forests.
And the glacier-fed Valbona River, this ribbon of turquoise, winding for over 16 miles through the valley's heart.
It's the kind of humbling landscape that makes human footprints seem so fleeting. But despite that wildness, centuries-old mountain life endures.
It does.
What does that life look like today compared to generations ago?
Well, while connectivity is improving, life remains fundamentally connected to the seasons and the land. Shepherds still guide flocks along ancient paths.
And the small, isolated villages like Dragoi offer incredible warmth and hospitality.
Historically, these communities existed largely outside the control of external empires, be it Ottoman or even the central government in Tirana. They relied instead on their own strict oral legal code.
And that idea of isolation giving rise to unique cultural practices is magnified in Theth National Park.
Also established in 96, here the steep limestone peaks rise over 8,000 feet.
The Theth preserves the centuries-old village and features a truly distinctive piece of heritage that we really need to explain.
The Kula, or lock-in tower.
We need to define that clearly because it links directly to the historical structure of mountain society. What exactly was the lock-in tower and how does it relate to the Kanun?
So the Kanun was the ancient customary law, dating back possibly to the medieval era, that governed everything in the Northern Highlands.
Everything from property rights to hospitality.
Everything. And crucially, it sanctioned the practice of jakmarja, or blood feud.
So if a man was killed, the victim's family was honor-bound to take vengeance, placing the killer and all adult males of his family under threat.
Exactly. So where does the tower come in?
Right.
The Kula, the lock-in tower, was the sanctuary. It was a fortified, windowless stone structure where men seeking refuge from a blood feud could essentially lock themselves in.
Often for years.
Often for years, to protect their lives and stop the cycle of violence until the families could negotiate a reconciliation.
So the tower stands as this silent witness to these intense traditions.
It's profound. It's a physical manifestation of a society that had to create its own systems of justice and survival because central government authority was completely non-existent in this remote territory.
And today, the tower echoes stories of reconciliation and survival.
But its presence reminds us of the profound challenges of living under that intense isolation. When you walk these dramatic trails, you feel a stirring sense of awe and humility, realizing that generations adapted so profoundly to the dramatic seasons and the social codes of the wilderness.
The current sense of openness and renewal with hikers and travelers now welcomed contrasts so sharply with those age-old customs.
As locals redefine community for the modern age.
Let's move to how the sheer power of water has sculpted this land, starting with the Yasumi Canyon, sometimes called the Grand Canyon of Albania.
And for good reason. The turquoise waters here carve a winding ribbon between dramatic sheer cliffs that rise more than 300 feet above the riverbed.
It's a testament to geological patience. Over millennia, the Osum River has sculpted this immense corridor, leaving behind caves and natural tunnels.
And these natural features aren't just geological. Legend connects the canyon directly to Albanian resistance and identity.
How so?
Well, folklore holds that locals used the canyon's natural corridors and hidden caves for secret passage and refuge during the Ottoman times.
So they wove its limestone walls into the fabric of national resistance against foreign powers.
That dual heritage is present today. You have the quiet, immense artistry of nature in the ancient walls versus the lively hum of modern adventure. It's now a magnet for whitewater rafters.
Its own type of coexistence adventure and ancient tranquility.
Exactly.
Next, we have Kamani Lake, which is fascinating because it's a testament to nature's power, even when it's shaped by human hands.
The human-made marvel, created by a massive hydroelectric dam built in 1978 during the communist era.
What's fascinating here is that the creation of the lake dramatically, and somewhat ironically, solidified the region's isolation.
Yes, the dam project was a huge infrastructural achievement for the regime, but the resulting lake sees turquoise waters wind through deep, flooded gorges, guarded by limestone cliffs that tower nearly 2,000 feet above the surface.
It created an artificial fjord system?
Precisely. And because of the depth and the terrain, the main mode of transportation, the ferry, became the only practical access for centuries-old villages that were cut off from road access by the flooding.
So the dam, which was intended to project modern power, unintentionally reinforced the isolation of these communities,
linking them only by boat to one another and the outside world.
So, despite the recent influx of eco-tourists drawn to its magnificent beauty, that tranquil remoteness endures.
It sharply contrasts with the bustle of Albania's urban centers. Solitude and human resilience converge here because the landscape, whether it's natural or altered, still dictates the rhythm of life.
Our final stop in this mountainous region is Permet, known affectionately as the City of Roses.
It was a critical, flourishing center of culture and resistance during the Ottoman times, located in the southeast near the border regions.
Permet is often highlighted for its incredible traditional hospitality. What's the significance of the customs you encounter there?
Well, the town itself is cradled by these lush green hills, with the Vjosa River carving a shimmering path. And locals greet visitors with just tremendous warmth.
And the tradition involves offering homemade raki and the famed gliko.
Yes, raki being the potent local brandy, and gliko is this dense, sweet preserve, often made from walnuts or cherries or even plums.
They're more than just food.
Oh, much more. They are powerful symbols of welcome and the local culture's generous spirit. This hospitality is a deeply rooted tradition of the region. This area was fiercely protective of its culture even during centuries of foreign rule.
And the blend of human ingenuity and natural grandeur is crystallized by the Ottoman Bridge of Benji.
Built in the early 19th century, its delicate stone arch rises about 30 feet above the gentle Vjosa River.
An iconic structure.
Surviving wars and floods, serving as a vital crossing on ancient trade routes. It reminds us of the enduring connection between trade, history, and the necessity of engineering in this rugged landscape. It connects the natural hot springs nearby to the culture of the town, showing how human life is really integrated with the landscape.
Okay, so as we move toward the sea, we enter the part of Albania where the legacy of military strategy and deep isolation directly intersects with its modern identity.
Its identity as a place of pristine leisure and tourism.
This section is key to understanding the final question we'll leave you with.
The coast really is the frontier of Albanian history. We can begin with the Karaburun Peninsula, where untamed beauty meets an inescapable strategic legacy.
You're talking about those steep gray limestone cliffs plunging dramatically into sapphire water.
Stretching for over 9 miles, it looks completely untouched.
Which is usually a sign that it was completely restricted.
Precisely. Historically, this peninsula was a vital strategic naval stronghold, controlling access to the Bay of Lori.
And then during the Cold War?
The Albanian military transformed it into a fortress. They carved dozens of secret military bunkers and submarine tunnels deep within its rocks. It was a restricted military exclusion zone for decades.
So the very reason it remains so spectacularly pristine today, the sapphire waters, the dense, low scrub, is because ordinary people and tourists couldn't access it until relatively recently.
The military literally preserved it through isolation.
That pattern of military necessity giving way to peaceful reflection is everywhere along the Riviera.
Absolutely. Consider Licorezi Castle, standing high above the bustling town of Saranda, built in the early 16th century by Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent.
It stood as a key Ottoman stronghold, defending the coast against Venetian incursions for over 400 years.
And now,
It embodies transformation.
the historic stones, once manned by soldiers anticipating conflict, now contrast sharply with modern cafe terraces set within the old fortress walls.
The open courtyards are filled with quiet laughter, not marching commands.
It's a remarkable transition. It shows how history, once shaped by conquest, can evolve into a space of peace and reflection.
Often leveraging the unparalleled views that made them militarily valuable in the first place.
We see that exact theme repeated just down the coast at Porto Palermo Castle near Himara, erected in the early 19th century by the powerful regional Ottoman ruler Ali Pasha of Tepelina.
A formidable figure who essentially carved out his own semi-autonomous domain.
And the castle, with its stone walls rising 30 feet above the shore, guarded vital maritime routes.
The heavy stones of empire, designed for absolute control and defense.
They contrast so dramatically with the inviting sparkle of the sea today. Swimmers and sunbathers gathered nearby, completely oblivious to the fact that this entire area was a guarded military zone for much of the 20th century.
Which again contributed to its current untouched beauty.
Exactly.
Shifting focus to the coastal cities themselves, Saranda and Himara have roots that plunge deep into antiquity.
Saranda was the ancient city of Unhesmos, a vital Greek and Roman port over 2,500 years ago.
And Himara's origins date back nearly as long.
What's fascinating about Himara is the cultural resilience you can see in its demographics and language. You have these whitewashed stone houses cascading down olive green hills.
And the generational ties are visible.
Elderly men conversing casually in both Albanian and Greek amid the seaside cafes. This duality reflects the long-standing presence of the ethnic Greek minority in the region and their cultural persistence, despite various political pressures over the centuries.
That linguistic survival is a quiet declaration of identity.
It is. And the peaceful rhythms of daily life contrast sharply with the rugged fortress-like castle perched 700 feet above, reminding everyone that this peaceful coexistence was hard-won.
This brings us to Ksamil,
Which is truly the epitome of coastal renewal, and a perfect example of how isolation creates opportunity.
It is vital to remember that only a few decades ago, during the communist era, Ksamil was off-limits.
Off-limits to outside visitors and largely uninhabited, reserved mostly for the party elite.
And now it is internationally famous. Its crystalline turquoise waters, soft white sands, and tiny emerald islets are a massive draw.
A testament to Albania's changing tides over the last 40 years.
And it stands in direct contrast to Butrint, those layered ancient ruins we discussed, which are only about 2 miles away.
Ksamil is the modern face of Albanian tourism, built on a foundation that was, by decree, locked away until the 1990s. The pristine quality of the water is a direct legacy of that enforced exclusion.
We must also appreciate the sanctuary beaches that owe their pristine state in large part to their former isolation. Take Gjajajpe Beach.
Gjajajpe is just dramatically framed by these golden limestone cliffs rising nearly 200 feet above the Ionian Sea.
Its rugged access and isolation meant that for centuries it served as a refuge for fishermen seeking shelter.
From storms or unwanted attention.
And that remoteness meant that during the communist era it was largely undisturbed.
It escaped the kind of unregulated development you see in other former Eastern Bloc coastal areas. Today it highlights a rare preservation, a place of seclusion, solitude, and natural beauty.
Similarly, Jal Beach, which stretches for nearly 1,000 feet of fine pebble coastline, was largely hidden behind the Iron Curtain.
Its pristine nature is a direct result of being a forgotten or restricted zone.
So when visitors stand there today, despite the lively summer music festivals that now happen,
They sense the genuine optimism of a country eager to share secrets that the rest of the world has only just discovered.
And then there is Mirror Beach, or Paskura Beach, which truly lives up to its name.
It remains a tranquil sanctuary. It has these cliffs rising 65 feet, 200 feet above the Ionian Sea. Its pristine quality of the water is a direct legacy of that enforced exclusion.
And then there is Mirror Beach, or Paskura Beach, which truly lives up to its name.
It remains a tranquil sanctuary. It has these cliffs rising 65 feet, that make the sunlight reflect off the water like shimmering shards of glass,
Historically, this cove was a crucial refuge for fishermen.
offering safety from both waves and unwelcome eyes. Its small size, difficult access helped keep it pristine, even as the nearby city of Saranda bustled and grew.
It's a perfect microcosm of how small, defensible points retain their natural beauty because they were either too hard to reach or too valuable as military or fishing refuges to be developed.
Exactly.
And on the Adriatic side, further north, Schengen captures that blend of resilience and renewal.
Its soft, golden sands stretch for more than 2 miles.
Schengen's history is defined by conflict. It was a highly contested harbor throughout the Ottoman and Venetian eras.
A vital strategic role for centuries. Today, the tranquil beach life contrasts so sharply with that tumultuous past. The gentle rhythm of waves on its wide, flat sands evokes this powerful sense of hope, a move away from military and political strife.
To round out this section, we have to mention the Blue Eye Spring, a geographical marvel that embodies nature's mysterious wonders.
It shimmers in these nearly surreal shades of turquoise and deep blue, forming a mesmerizing pool over 50 feet across.
It's been revered since the Ottoman era as a sacred or awe-inspiring place.
And the water erupts from a measured depth of at least 130 feet, though the bottom remains unseen, which just adds to its mystique.
The fact that divers can't definitively reach the source suggests immense underground pressure and flow, doesn't it?
It does. While it's a serene oasis for travelers today, those turbulent underground currents hint at raw, untamed geological power beneath the calm surface.
It reminds us that Albania's beauty isn't just passive.
It's the result of powerful, ongoing natural forces.
And before we leave the coast, we should highlight the Divjaka Karavasta National Park on the Adriatic side.
Another great example of a geographically isolated protected zone. Established in 1966, this protected landscape spans over 50 square miles.
And it's renowned as a sanctuary for the rare Dalmatian pelican.
A majestic bird with a wingspan stretching nearly 10 feet. Its status as a lagoon and wetland area meant it was unsuitable for major development during the isolationist era, which allowed this crucial ecosystem to survive and thrive.
A reminder of the vulnerability and resilience of these unique natural ecosystems surviving the political turmoil around them.
Absolutely.
What a profound journey. If we were to synthesize all these experiences, from the brightly painted revival of Tirana to the silent, rugged peaks of Theth, Albania is defined by this fierce fusion.
A fusion of its ancient Greek, Roman, and Ottoman past, combined with a modern commitment to radical, rapid renewal.
And the overriding theme we've observed everywhere, from the architecture to the landscape, is resilience.
Yes, we've seen survival from the centuries-old tradition of the Kanun and the lock-in tower in Theth,
To the survival of the Etembe Mosque against state atheism and the containment of nuclear paranoia within the bunk art museums.
we've seen transformation. Polluted cities turning into green hubs and isolated, restricted coasts transforming into vibrant, sought-after destinations like Samel.
What's fascinating here is how the landscape itself, the steep mountains, the deep canyons like Osumi, the strategic peninsulas like Karaburun, has always dictated the human story.
Providing both necessary isolation and, crucially, sanctuary. The land was their protection, and their isolation was often their preservation.
This is a place where the history of conquest and conflict has peacefully evolved into spaces of reflection and modern leisure.
Porto Palermo Castle, once a key fortification, is now simply a beautiful, historic backdrop for a coastal swim. The shift from fortress to forum encapsulates the entire deep dive.
And that transition leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to carry forward.
We spent significant time detailing how places like the Karaburun Peninsula, Jajaipe Beach, Jal Beach, and even Samil remain largely untouched, pristine, and wild, primarily because they were designated as strategic military zones, or were simply too remote during decades of total isolation behind the Iron Curtain.
So this raises a truly important question.
Can true, unspoiled beauty only emerge and survive because of a period of being completely locked away and shielded from global development and mass human encroachment? It suggests that sometimes political isolation is the most effective form of ecological and cultural preservation.